Let's do imposter syndrome.
I love it.
I'm dying to do it.
Speaking of empowered. Yeah. So imposter syndrome. This is something that you and I have touched on before. Here's the question. Why does imposter syndrome always show up when good things happen in my life? Says Percy A. What is imposter syndrome? And why is it that people who actually would be described by others as very successful often are crippled by this?
So I've been dealing with imposter syndrome a lot lately. Like here's what imposter syndrome sounds like to me in my head. Who do I think I am? Why would anyone listen to me? And everyone's going to find out I'm a big, fat, phony fraud. Mm-hmm. What does it sound like for you?
Exactly that. In fact, for me, it shows up in so many subtler ways too, because if I'm meditating and it suddenly occurs to me, a thought arises, something I said on my show that wasn't quite the way I wanted to express it. I'm like, well, of course I'm an idiot. Why is anyone listening to me anyways? I'm totally worthless. And it becomes a thing.
God.
So imposter syndrome, this deep sense of I'm not supposed to be here. This is not right. I'm not worthy of this, whatever. People shouldn't be listening to me.
So for me, this came up recently, and I know you know this, after I was on a podcast called Ologies.
Great podcast.
Ologies has been my favorite podcast for 4 years. I discovered it 4 years ago when it was a little tiny. It's just a nerdy science podcast, and Allie Ward is her name, and she interviews all these ologists. So like mycology is the study of mushrooms, and cosmology is the study of the cosmos, and I love pain communication, and I believe deeply that everyone deserves to understand pain and that we're not going to treat it unless everyone understands it. So I pitched to her this episode called Dolorology, which is an actual word. It's the science of pain.
I love it.
It's the science of pain. And I didn't hear from her for 4 years because she's very busy and also cool. But what happened over those 4 years is that little podcast became super completely famous, and I'm glad she ignored me for 4 years.
She's the number 2 science podcast most of the time. I know this because I beat her 1 week with the VPZD show.
Whoa.
We got number 2, and then we faded back to number 8 or something.
No way.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. But she's been at this a long time, and she finally wrote back to me and said, okay, we're going to do a pain episode. And it went viral.
Yeah.
But I still, as you can tell, I still have a lot of disbelief around this. So it was shared 250,000 times in like a week. And when I found that out, I was like, wait, what? Like, shit, everyone's going to find out that I'm an imposter. So it came up real hard for me, and I got anxious about it, actually. I was like, should I tell her to take it down? Like, who do I think I am, that I get to be on Ologies and that I'm disseminating this information? Now, I want to say this, and I know it's going to make me sound like a cocky a-hole, so I want to be like careful about it, but I also want to say the facts are I was trained at Brown and Columbia. I have a PhD from UCSD. I have 4 degrees. I did a postdoc and an internship. I teach at Stanford and UCSF. I know I'm a nerd, and I don't do it for accolades. I do it because I'm a nerd and I want to learn. And if I could go to school the rest of my life, I would. Like, I'm not trying to be cool. Like, I just really deeply love learning and communicating science, as you know. Like, it's just, I was always a nerd. Like, I was a library mouse nerd. I didn't have friends. I was not cool. No one wanted to hang out with me. So I'm not saying, but when you look at this like when I look at you, you're so successful and so brilliant and so well trained, right? And you still have the thought,
I'm a steaming piece of shit. Yeah.
What is that? What is that?
So this is the heart. This is the heart of imposter
What
syndrome.
is that?
It's the heart of imposter syndrome. In medicine, it's very common.
Yeah.
Very,
Why?
very common. And I suspect, now there's many, look, I'm speculating, but I would say this. I think the more you know about something, the more you're passionate about something, the more you understand how little you know.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's right.
Then there becomes this kind of cycle of self-doubt because you're like, oh, I know how complicated this is. And here I am out there saying, oh, this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
And there's that dental drill again. It's giving me like, I'm starting to feel it in my gums. There's this idea then that, well, I'm not worthy of saying it. So what happens is someone with very little knowledge who doesn't yet trigger the imposter syndrome will go and say it because they have instead Dunning-Kruger syndrome where they don't know what they don't know. And they're in a different part of the cycle of knowledge. So ultimately then, I think the most successful people who know the most about something, who are subject matter experts, feel the deepest kind of imposter syndrome because they're like, dude, I don't know. you know? Or they make another cognitive fallacy where they assume others know at least as much as them. Like, this is my problem. Like, sometimes I won't do a show because I'm like, well, that's just dumb. Everybody knows that. I'm not going to talk about the symptoms and signs of COVID. And Logan, my producer, early in the pandemic, he's like, dude, do a thing on the symptoms and signs of COVID. And I was like, that's so dumb, dude. People aren't that dumb. They're going to know it. Whereas in reality, I'm thinking, you know, I don't want to look stupid by saying something so obvious. Well, so I do the video. It gets like 25 million views. Of
course, people don't know.
Because people don't know. Because it's not in the training of the average layperson to know that. So again, and then the imposter syndrome and all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So because I want to learn the things about the things. And by the way, imposter syndrome has been very uncomfortable for me. It has made me like maybe not want to do certain things. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do this thing with Zubin. Who do I think I am?
Yes.
Right.
And yet you push through it every time.
Despite sweating through my clothes and feeling like I'm going to throw up.
And you know, it's a kind of suffering for you, but for me, I see it as, okay, so this is now it's kind of the way we do business, you and I. Like, I know you're going to get nervous. I'm going
to try and bail.
And you're going to try to bail. And then I'm going to be like, dude, let me tell you all the ways that you help people. And then you go back to the mission, which is your mission. This is the thing. Yeah. You're just a conduit for it. You're not even a thing, Rachel. Right. I hate to like take you down.
It has nothing to do with me at all.
No, you're a hole in the universe that channels this truth.
Agree.
And you know it in the deepest intuitive levels, which is why you keep showing up, even though it takes years off your life.
Dude, it takes years off
my life. And post-COVID.
Right.
With your long tail of fatigue.
With my long tail of fatigue. But I do feel a lot better right now and very energized because I feel like this work is important and the information is important.
I'm going to make a meta comment on that. I sense the switch happens the minute we start going.
I agree with you. I feel it too.
And I feel it too. Because I'm also just like, okay, we got to, you know, every time before a show, I'm always nervous, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. I'm always just like, you know, because there's a few things. I have to run all this equipment too. I have to guide a conversation, which means I need a level of attention and engagement. Otherwise, it's inauthentic. Yeah. And I also have imposter syndrome.
Dude, okay, so let's tackle that. I think I'm going to help you with imposter syndrome.
Nice.
Yeah. So I went down this rabbit hole and I looked up imposter syndrome and the treatment of it. I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to know how common it was. And I wanted to know what to effing do about it. And I found a gentleman named Jordan Harbinger.
Who is a mutual acquaintance because I was on his show.
And I apparently am not going to be on his show because I pitched a show for him.
Nice.
It's true.
Nice.
It's true. But he's a really nice dude.
He is a smart, passionate guy. And he lives down here.
He does?
Yeah, he's in like San Jose somewhere, yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, so his show is called The Jordan Harbinger Show. And the episode that I found was on imposter syndrome. And I read a whole bunch of articles. And what I liked about his show was that at the end of it, it listed resources, which is what you do too, and it had all the articles on imposter syndrome that he had cited. And again, back to that thing where I'm a nerd, I was like, I'm going to consume all of it. So here's what I discovered. There are 4 steps to knocking imposter syndrome out.
Nice.
To be clear, sort of like with pain, it's not like you're never going to have it, but when you have it, you're going to know what to do about it. Step 1. Ready? Acknowledge that it's happening. Acknowledge it. Don't pretend it's not happening. Don't avoid it. Acknowledge that it's happening and talk about it and know that it happens to everyone. By the way, imposter syndrome happens to everyone at some point, usually when they're moving in a forward direction in their lives. That's right.
Okay.
So know it's happening and acknowledge it. And like, if you can say to someone that it's happening, even better, because you'll get validation from that other person. Like, oh yeah, I've had imposter syndrome too. And then you're like, oh, I'm not all alone with this.
This is why I talk about it, I think, unconsciously. I'm like, do you get this too? Do you get this too?
And this goes back to social medicine. Social medicine is real. When you tell someone about a thing that you're suffering with and they validate it, your suffering goes down. You're like, oh God, Zubin has imposter syndrome also. Well, then now I feel a little less bad because that guy knows all the things. So,
I know, right? It's not easy being the perfect battle cat and He-Man all rolled up in one with a little side of Orko.
Yeah, it must be hard for you.
I'm actually 99% snarf genetically. That's why I really like your biopsychosocial model, because I'm like, genes don't determine my snarfness.
I wonder if depression runs in the snarf line. I hope not.
They strike me as a very pessimistic, nattering nabob of negativity, the snarf.
Oh, wow.
So it may be, I think it's
nattering
biopsychosocial.
nabob of negativity.
It was one of Nixon's henchmen who said that
nattering nabob?
about the liberal media. He was like, the nattering leading nabobs of negativity would say this about.
It's so good. I
it's a good
love
one,
the
right?
alliteration on that one.
It's good.
All right. So
Back to you.
Right. Okay. But so acknowledging and normalizing. It's happening. This imposter syndrome thing is happening to me. And I know that it happens to everyone. I'm going to talk to someone about it and normalize it.
Yeah.
That's thing one. Step two is externalizing. Externalizing means there's a thing happening inside of you and you attach to it sometimes. So it becomes part of your identity, but you don't want to do that. I'm going to give you an example. Instead of thinking, I am an imposter, which is fusing with the thought and having it become part of your identity, you want to externalize it and instead say, not I am an imposter. I am having this experience of imposterism. I am having this experience of imposter syndrome.
That's spirituality 101 too. That's meditation 101.
Is it?
You disidentify from the experience and instead notice that it's an occurrence in awareness. So not, oh, I'm in pain. You say, no. I'm having an experience of pain.
Right. That's right.
And then you can even go farther and say, awareness of the pain and the pain are not two things. It's just pain.
Right.
That's all.
And it's the same with depression. Instead of I am a depressed person,
Yes.
it's I'm having this experience of depression.
That's right.
All the things are connected.
So imposter syndrome, you disidentify from it, but you experience it. You say, okay, I acknowledge the experience. Yeah.
I'm having the experience, but I'm not, it's not that I am an imposter. It's not my identity. I'm just having this experience. And then step three is reframing it. What do I mean by reframing it? Imposter syndrome happens during times of human growth. It's actually a sign of success. It's a sign that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're challenging yourself and you're pushing yourself. And if you're having an imposter syndrome moment, it actually is, if you'd like to reframe it, which I recommend because it's helping me immensely, it means that you are moving forward in your life and you're stretching yourself a little bit and you are growing and succeeding. And what I learned from Jordan Harbinger is imposter syndrome happens to people who are high achieving. And of course it does, because you are trying to grow and you are trying to, step into these like shoes that don't fit you yet, but you're hoping that they do. So acknowledge it, externalize it, reframe it.
Reframe it. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That is meditation 101 too. And I'll add even another spin on it that is probably wrong, but I'm going to say it anyways.
Do it.
In a way, what we resist persists, right? And so by saying, oh, I'm having this imposter syndrome now. Why am I having this now? I'm about to give a talk. It's going to totally derail my whole talk. And I'm just going to worry about it. And so you're resisting it. Instead, if you say, oh, there it is, imposter syndrome. Oh, yeah, I'm going to reframe it. Yeah, it's because I'm about to do something cool that is a challenge for me. And I'm appropriately, oh, you know what? What is imposter syndrome? It's a part of my unconscious, a little child in there that's trying to get my attention and be like, hey, like you're going to try something that's really hard.
I'm feeling a little scared.
I'm feeling a little scared.
And insecure.
And so you just want to take it and be like, it's okay. It's all right. Totally. It is going to be a little scary, but we're going to do it together. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here for me, right?
I love that.
So then it's not this adversarial relationship with this part of you. Yeah.
Yep. Like, oh, this is a good thing and it's a byproduct of success.
Yeah.
And how proud of myself am I that I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and doing this thing anyway, even though it's making me uncomfortable.
That's right. That's right.
That's the reframe.
I love it.
Good.
Man, that was really helpful.
Wasn't that cool?
That was really cool.
I know. I read all the things. I thought it was so fascinating. And it turns out I actually originally thought that women suffered from it more than men. Guess what? Not true.
Really?
I know. It's not true. I don't think it's true. Men and women equally is what I read.
Now, it makes sense. It makes sense. Although you would argue, well, the biopsychosocial components of women are different than men, so maybe there would be a difference. But I think this is a fundamental human thing. Like, goes right to the core of identity, the core of some evolved deep conditioning. Like it's almost, we talk about genetics, right?
Yeah.
As this kind of like inherited thing. You can reframe genetics as a kind of I hate to use this word because it sounds like new age mumbo jumbo, but a kind of karma, a kind of an inheritance of a pattern that goes from the ancient like beginning of the universe all the way to now. Yeah. So what is imposter syndrome? It's a pattern of energy that has kept us safe in some way. We don't overextend.
Yeah, right.
Because that little guy in there is like, bro, that's not your domain.
Rein it in a little bit.
Rein it in. And so to some extent, it keeps you from doing really stupid stuff, but then it becomes a problem when you're trying to stretch. So it's always a balance. I love it.
Yeah. And I think the real trick, as you just touched on with imposter syndrome, is if it's preventing you from doing things, then it's a problem.
Then it's a problem.
So if you feel it and you do the things anyway, you're on it.
Which is what you do.
Which is what you do.
Well, we both kind of do it. But I think you have to overcome more in the current because you're pushing yourself in a way that, first of all, you've been doing it for a long time. You have every expertise in this, but you haven't done it as much as I have in terms of pushing yourself for that long.
No way.
Because 10 years ago, I started this thing in 2010. When I did TEDMed in 2013, like I've never been so scared.
Oh my
God.
I can only imagine.
It still gives me a little bit of panic thinking about it. And after that, every time I did a talk, it was just everything that you say, sweating and panic and wanting to throw up, right? And all of that. So and that lasted for years.
No, don't tell me that.
Well, but it's also because I never really had the tools or the approach to address it. I would just go, this is just something that happens every time. And every time I do a talk, I'd be like, it was so damaging to me physiologically that I would be like, I'm never doing this
Dreading
again.
the next one.
I'm never doing this again. And then the next one I'd get invited and I'd get a rush of like, yes, I love talking. And then I would remember, oh no, wait, no.
The physiology.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, just like a quick reminder that like anyone who thinks that emotions just live in your head and are not physiological. Well, this is like the perfect example of how emotions actually come out in your body and can make you physically ill.
Totally.
And can perpetuate any sort of syndrome that you already have.
Absolutely. They are feelings for a reason. You feel them in the body.
Right.
Yeah. I think I told you this last time, like energy and motion, emotion.
Ooh.
Yeah. It is in its rawest sense, it's a bodily sensation that we then tell a lot of stories about that then we make it heady.
Totally.
But the rawest part of the emotion is a sensation. Boy, thinking back to those times right before you go on stage when you feel those physiologic responses, I mean, what if you just dive into the sensation? That's what I do now sometimes because I'll still get a little
You just feel the feeling.
You just feel it. You just go, oh, there it is. There's my friend panic or rapid heart rate. You know what's crazy is
talking about it is making my heart go crazy.
Me too. So there's a thing that happens with me now where all that panic is compressed into a 30-second period. So it used to be like I'd feel it over even the night before and all days.
Days before.
And now what happens is I'm totally chill until they go, our next speaker is this guy and he's done this and this and this. And it's crazy. You feel it. You go, this rush, the heart rate speeds up. It's going like 110. I'm sure my blood pressure is like high. I'm starting to feel it in the chest, in the stomach, the butterflies, all of that. The imposter is coming out. Like, dude, you have no business being here. Get the hell out now. Run, fight or flight. But then because I've kind of acknowledged it and practiced it and I've been through it and I've done it, it starts to fade and I go on stage and I do my thing. Okay, and it actually, if anything, it gives you that little kick in the pants. Yeah.
The adrenaline. Okay, that's good to know. I aspire to get to that.
You're 99% there.
I am not.
You are.
Not 99% there.
Look at what a natural you are when you talk about stuff you love.
All right, great.
All right, we'll stop.
Yeah.
So to
compliments are hard for me. Because imposter syndrome, that's why compliments are hard for me. That's actually why. Okay.